Greetings, greetings, greetings. Happy spring. We made it, y'all. I feel like this year been like 6 years already, but we have made it to spring, the astrological new year. And welcome to Black Women Are Dope AF. This is our weekly series where I invite Black women to come and to learn about other incredible Black women throughout history, and eventually we'll get to some modern times, but we have so many ancestral mothers that have been amazing that we want to highlight and to share information about so that we can remember who we are. We can remember the greatness from which we come as Black women. Today we are honoring Nana Yaa Asantewaa of what the region that is now known as Ghana. But before we get into it, if that sounds like something you're interested in, if that's your jam, if you are a Black woman who is just looking to remember your power, remember your strength, and stay grounded through these incredibly transformative times that we are in, definitely like, subscribe, share, comment, engage with this content so that we can keep sharing we are. Ooh, I kind of blacked out for a minute there. Hopefully the video was still streaming. But again, if that's your thing, please like, subscribe, ride with us on this. And who is the us? The us is me. I am Barbara Ohuninifa. I am an author, a coach, a writer, and a survivor, and a Black woman that's just been through some things. And my work here in terms of creating content, writing books, coaching clients, working with the community is all centered around helping Black women to recognize that we are beautiful, remember that we are powerful, and to be loved. I guess I'm still streaming. I kind of blacked out again. We're having some interesting technical things, but y'all know what? It is Mercury retrograde. That's what happens when you go live and dealing with technology while technology is telling you, we're going to do some things. So strange. It looks like I'm still streaming. Hopefully I am. If I'm not, I will record it and upload it another time. But we're going to keep going. But I'm going to have to bring my presentation back up. But in the meantime, again, so my work is for Black women, as I mentioned, Beautiful, Powerful Love. That's the name of this channel, and all of the resources and places where you can find me on social media, including Medium, where I have blogs where we talk about the same concept, the same thing. And so that's the work that I do, and I think it's super important. So again, if that's your thing, definitely like, subscribe, share this content, comment, because again, we are in some strange times, and we need to be able to support each other and to know who we are in that. All right, so let's get into it, y'all. It's a Friday. It is a Friday, and y'all got some joy to get out and have and go and do. So I'm going to just check real quick before I get into it and make sure that we are actually up on YouTube. Because that little glitch that happened, I could be still streaming or maybe not. We shall see. But until then, let's see where we are. It is unclear. Let me check one other place. Because we may have to just start this all over again if I actually was kicked off of YouTube. And let's see. Okay, we're back in it once again. Wow, we have really been having some Mercury retrograde tech glitches, but it looks like I'm here. We're back in it once again. Y'all are here with me, and I am going to some Mercury retrograde tech glitches, but it looks like I'm turn off the YouTube that I was checking to make sure I was still live. All right, that's enough with the glitches, y'all. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Yaa Asantewaa. And take a deep breath for the glitches. But we still here. And I thank you for being here with me. So, Yaa Asantewaa was born in 1840 in the Ashanti Kingdom. Be Sa is the name of the area that she was from. And again, that's modern day Ghana. And she was part of a powerful Ashanti royal family. Now, her full name again is Yaa Asantewaa. Nana is a honorific title, and it can delineate, in this case, her status as Queen Mother, which is a powerful role in Ashanti governance. And it also reflects her royal or noble lineage, as well as her legitimacy as a ruler and a decision maker. In other words, it puts some respect on her name. But it also, again, is a title that's used in different scenarios and also for men or women. So it is a unisex title, if you will. You will find men whose name are Asantewaa. Hold for just a moment as I fix the one final technical glitch that I was having. All right, there we go. Now the mic is actually on. And again, Yaa Asantewaa, now that I'm mic'd up. And that Nana is a title. Ya is a word that means a female born on a Thursday in the Akan tradition, which is her tradition. And Asantewaa signifies her identity as a part of the Oyoko clan, and also um, the spiritual traditions that she followed and the deities that she followed and that she worked with. But that Oyoko clan is known for their political and military leadership. So she came from royal family and came from a clan or a lineage that is positioned for leadership. So that is who she was. And also taking into account the fact that she was born in 1840, this was before um, the British colonized the Ashanti nation. They were already dibbling dabbling in the area, which we'll talk about a little bit as we go forward, but she was born free and uncolonized. So what she ended up doing, and as we'll talk as we go forward, she was not only defending a concept, was defending the freedoms and the realities that she had known. And again, with the Ashanti people, it's deeply spiritual. If you go back to a video, there's actually a couple of videos, but one in particular where I am sharing information about two very prominent spiritual figures in that same area that brought the Akan religion and Akan traditions to the Americas. And that goes into a lot more detail about the Akan spiritual practices, and how they view the world and the importance it is. It's not a separate thing. The spirituality is not a separate thing. Much like many African traditions, the spirituality is not something separate. It is integrated throughout everything that they do, but not in a dogmatic way, but in a giving reverence to nature and to family and to ancestors, all the things that are necessary to actually create humanity. African spiritual traditions incorporate those and honor those. And this was the same with Nana Yaa Asantewaa's spiritual tradition. And in that spiritual tradition, and when with the Ashanti culture, women are respected not only as spiritual figures, but as advisors. And all of this allowed her to assert some authority over the military and political matters, which we'll get into as we go forward. So the biggest thing that we're going to get into is that she led the War of the Golden Stool, and that was in 1800s, and that was a fight to defend the Ashanti sovereignty. But let's take a step back and talk about the British colonization of the Gold Coast. They named it the Gold Coast because all they could see was the gold. And again, I talk about this in some previous videos with Nana Denny Zulu, as well as talking about a separate video talking about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who was the leader who actually led the um, the freedom and for Ghana actually gaining its independence from Britain. But Britain came into the area in the early 1800s and started expanding its influence, basically slowly colonizing, beginning at the coast and moving its way in. By 1821, they had annexed, their word for conquered, colonized, invaded. We have these words that kind of sanitize us history. That means annex, that they conquered, invaded, colonized. Coastal forts and settlements, and set up their British African Company of Merchants. And then they were continuing to try to expand their influence and expand um, the area that they colonized, and the Ashanti people were not having it. And so there were a number of conflicts, wars that were fought. And the final one in 1874 culminated in the British sacking of Kumasi. This is how the history will say that they sacked Kumasi. What it is they raided it, they robbed and pillaged it, stole all of the royal artifacts, stole the wealth that they were already stealing from the region in general, extracting timber, gold, diamonds, all of these things that actually built the British wealth and the British Empire. But as they sacked this Kumasi, which was the capital of the Ashanti nation, they went into the royal palace, took everything that they could, and then burned everything to the ground. Much like, fast forward, but also rewind to a video that I made in Black History Month talking about um, the Black Wall Street. This is the same thing that they did with Black Wall Street. They went in, ransacked, looted, and took everything that they could and then burned the rest to the ground as they were also bombing people. So this is a playbook of these people that they continue using throughout history. So this, and it was called the wars or the conflicts leading up to the sacking of Kumasi was a series of Anglo-Ashanti wars, and there were three of them, and the third one was what ended in the sacking of Kumasi. And again, and it was a deliberate act, not only the pillaging, which is what they were doing to the continent anyway, the pillaging and looting, but then burning it down to the ground. They were trying to dismantle the Ashanti nation's political and cultural stronghold because they could see how that was what was fueling them, and that was what was giving them the power to continue to fight for their people. And then later on, they exiled the king again. Um, which is amazing to me. The unmitigated God will come into an area, tell the people, we're not going to command you. We're going to take all your resources. We're going to reconstruct how you live, how you flow every day, how you interact with each other, the lives that you have had for generations, for hundreds of years, because we want to extract from where the wealth that you're sitting on, and we want you to work for us while we're doing it. And now we're gonna take your leader and send him someplace else, and now y'all are under our rule. Like these are all of the things that these people who are now the global leaders actually have done. And this is like the more sanitized version of it. I'm trying to desanitize it a little bit, but the things that they did were just horrific. So military conquest, coercion, this is how the British came into this area, and exploiting the resources, extracting everything that they could, disregarding the welfare of the local families, and suppressing the cultural and spiritual traditions of the people and exploiting them economically. And then it goes on to, in 1901, that the Ashanti kingdom, they'll say, was formally annexed, which means that they conquered the Ashanti kingdom, colonized them, and put them under British control. You can't annex another people who are already a sovereign people. What you can do is invade and conquer them, much like we see happening in real time in front of our eyes right now in other parts of the world, and even in the US. It's still happening. History, I always say, history does not just happen in chunks. It is a continuum. The same playbook. They keep going back to the same playbook. And we are still living in the follow-up times from when these things happened in the past. It didn't just start and stop, and then we are on a new timeline. We're in the same timeline. These things are still happening. So, and then fast forward all the way to 1957, when the Gold Coast became the first African nation to gain its independence from colonial rule, which is now Ghana, which again, I mentioned that, and you can have much more details around how that was done in my video where I talk about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah as well as Queen Mother Moore. So you can find that on the channel here to dig more into detail. But let's take a step back to the War of the Golden Stool and what that was about. So that was in 1900. So the Golden Stool was a sacred throne of the Ashanti people, and it symbolized the soul and unity. And if you study and or practice any African spiritual traditions, understanding that there are symbols, spiritual symbols that are very important, but then there are symbols that are more sacred than others. Now, this stool was said to have literally descended from the heavens to land on the lap of the then ruler, thereby giving him a cosmic go-ahead, a cosmic nod to like, yeah, you lead the people. I'm like, I'm paraphrasing. And this stool was sent and was meant to house the soul of the Ashanti people, past, present, and future. So all the Ashanti people that exist and ever would exist, the souls, the energy, the essence of them was said to be encased in this throne. So it was highly sacred to them. No one sat on this throne. And the idea and concept of a throne is a very deep metaphysical concept, dealing with sacred geometry, dealing with astrology and astronomy. It is a cosmic understanding, a cosmic spiritual understanding. Just the very concept of a stool. It's not just something you sit on. It has meaning that is beyond the scope of this video, but just know it is significant not only in the Ashanti culture, but across the board when we start to look at African spiritualities or indigenous ancient spiritualities. This concept is there, and it is super powerful. So the idea is that, again, this was a sacred artifact of the Ashanti people, and a British governor decided, in much the way that that white men do, that he was going to sit on this throne, on this stool, because of course he saw it as a uh, I mean, it was a symbol of power, but it was not a symbol of power for him and not for humans, and definitely not to sit your dirty ass on. I'm just saying. So he was demanding to sit on it. I'm not even going to say his name because he don't even deserve that kind of reverence, but demanded to sit on the golden stool, and just again saw it as a symbol of authority, and he wanted to assert his authority. And that was an affront to the Ashanti people. And so moving on, and I'll just bring up the next part here, is that when the Ashanti leaders gathered to discuss this, now mind you, by this time they had already exiled the king. So you have all of the Ashanti leaders who were politically vulnerable because they didn't have their king gathering to talk about what the hell are we gonna do? This dude wants to sit on we can't let that happen, but what do we do? What do we do? So they all hemming and hawing. And Queen Mother, Nana Yaa Asantewaa, stood up and said, "Oh, the men, y'all are unclear of what to do? Oh, I know exactly what to do. The women will fight. He will not sit on his throne. We will fight." And that is what, and she criticized the men because they were being hesitant. They were afraid and being hesitant to defend something so incredibly sacred to their people. That alone pissed her off. And she said, no, no, this is not happening. So she gathered troops. She gathered and inspired the women. She said, if the men aren't going to do it, the women are going to do it. And again, this was an environment, a culture where women had a level of esteem, even though they weren't necessarily warriors, but they did train in it. So the fact that she and the other women stood up, it actually encouraged and inspired some of the men. And so they went to war and they fought for 6 months. Now, when she gave that speech, it was infused with Ashanti spirituality. It was infused with invoking ancestral protection, ancestral guidance. It was infused with invoking the earth deity in that pantheon of deities called Asantewaa. Uh, so you can see her name is a call to that deity in and of itself. So when she spoke, criticizing the men for not standing up and indicating and declaring the women will do it then. And that was just that. I just keep having to pause on that because that to me is just so incredibly powerful and so indicative of Black women even today. When it's not getting done, what do we say? God damn it, I'll do it myself. And that is what she did. We will do it ourselves. Y'all not gonna fight for something that is not just a thing, but is the soul of our people. She stood up and she did it. So she mobilized thousands of warriors, including women. They did spiritual rites, they sung war songs, they trained in guerrilla tactics. They did the thing, and she led a 6-month siege of the British fort in Kumasi. So remember, the British had come in, invaded Kumasi, sacked it, um, looted it, pillaged it, burned it to the ground, and then set up a fort there. So for 6 months, she attacked, ambush tactics, guerrilla tactics, all the things because this was their land, this is their people. And trust and believe the ancestors were fighting with them as well. And the British, they struggled for a long time. Again, these 6 months before they could actually overpower and defeat the Ashanti. And it also was shocking to them because they also weren't used to fighting women, and they were coming toe to toe, face to face with Black women warriors who were holding their own and defeating them. So all of this combined was just a powerful signal that she made, and a powerful act that she made, and an act of courage, and an act of love. If we go back to talking about the sacred shields and our ancestral activation, everything, or the sacred resistance, everything that our resistance fighters always do is based in love. Love for themselves and love for their people. And it was the same for Nana Yaa Asantewaa. Her deep love for her people, for her culture, for her heritage, for her spirituality, past, present, and future, she had to fight, and she inspired others to fight as well. And then the other thing that I'll mention is that again, when the British finally overtook the Ashanti resistance, she was captured in 1901, Yaa Asantewaa, and they exiled her to the Seychelles Island, which is an island in the Indian Ocean on the other side of the continent. So they wanted to take them as far away as they could. So Ghana is on the west side of the continent of Africa, and the Seychelles Islands is on the east in the Indian Ocean on the east side of the continent of Africa. And it is where they also exiled the king of the Ashanti nation, and where they would exile a lot of West African leaders to make sure that they were as far away from their people as possible. I don't know, I can't find any records of what the conditions were like on that island, but I am going to have faith that the incredible leaders that they placed there made it do what it do, and survived as best they could. But we send them love back in time and send them light back in time. So she was exiled there for almost 2 decades, and she died in 1921 at the age of 81. Oddly enough, there are no coincidences. It was in 1921, almost 2 decades after the war was fought, the War of the Golden Stool, that the Golden Stool was accidentally found. So, mind you, they overtook, let's rewind, in 1901 when they captured Nana Yaa and they overtook the Ashanti kingdom and colonized them, they still didn't get the Golden Stool. So this whole war and on the casualties on the British side, everything that they were trying to do in symbolism of subjugating these people, they still didn't get the golden stool. So Nana Yaa had effectively accomplished what she set out to accomplish, which was to protect that golden stool. And then, later on, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came through and finished the job by freeing the Ghanaian people from colonial rule. So what happened was in 1921, it was accidentally discovered by a group of African road workers. It was, again, they were digging up and they found it. Now they say accidentally. The workers stripped the gold ornaments from the stool and desecrated it. They weren't aware of the spiritual significance. And then the Ashanti people learned of this and they were outraged, and the British said, "Oh, now we understand. That's horrible." So they arrested and punished the people, the perpetrators. Um, and then the Ashanti people reclaimed and restored the golden stool. So it is in Ashanti um, possession today. And I pause on that because did the British actually do something helpful? You know how they want to be heroes in a situation, but not necessarily be heroes in a situation. Like, you arrested and punished the perpetrators. What were the African road workers? Who were they working for? Weren't they working for the British? Weren't you having them do things because you had colonized the area? You had colonized these people? Anyway, so it is still there and it's guarded and revered and it's never been sat on. That is the golden stool is still in possession of the Ashanti people. So we give thanks to Nana Yaa Asantewaa, who stood up and said, if y'all ain't gonna do it, if the men ain't gonna do it, the women are gonna do it, and they led the way. The men followed as they should, but they accomplished the mission. The golden stool was protected. Even that time, that moment of being desecrated when it was accidentally found, it still was not. They were able to reclaim it and to restore it to its spiritual significance. So we give thanks to her for that. So let's talk about why she is dope AF. I'm gonna just say it. Why she is dope as fuck. So one, I'm gonna make this bigger so you can hopefully see that a little bit better. So first of all, she was the last African woman who led a major anti-colonial war against the British. Now, many leaders submit to British rule, just like we see many leaders in the United States submitting to idiotic rule. But she stood her ground and she launched an armed resistance. She said, no, no, not today. You're not going to desecrate our spiritual traditions. You're not going to desecrate the soul of our people. She stood up as a queen mother, as a mother does. And when she protects her people, her children, her family, she stood up and she did that and was the last African woman to do that in that type of context and waging war against the British in an anti-colonial way. And by doing so, she shattered these gender norms that the colonial people had, that these British people had. They had already subjugated their women. European history, it is what it is. And I'm not here to talk about that. So when they get into battle and in war with the Ashanti people, again, they were not accustomed to fighting women. I'm sure they were looking at them about how they could, do horrible things to the women that only they could do to women. But in this case, the women were coming with the fire. They were coming with the fight. And by shattering that gender norm, that's part of what threw them off for 6 months. And they didn't, not only did they not expect resistance from the Ashanti people, they didn't expect women to show up with that resistance, with the fierceness that they did. They didn't understand that they were dealing with something that was entering into spiritual realms, and that is part of the role of the divine feminine, is to protect women, children, spirituality, all those things. So she shattered those norms and, you know, caught those British soldiers off guard, and we give thanks for that. And she is a symbol of African resistance and cultural pride. She's even quoted, people refer to her today in terms of that resistance and the fight that she fought. And her defiance delayed British control of the Ashanti lands. They thought it was going to be an easy walk in, and literally they were going to seize the golden stool and seize the entire region and the people. But her standing up, defying what was the norm, and even somewhat what was the norm within her own culture, because again, it was her response was, if the men aren't going to do it, the women were going to do it. So it was the assumption, or the general practice, is that the men would go to war, but they were being too hesitant. And now today she is honored through festivals, schools, statues. She has secured her legacy as the warrior queen, and we give thanks for her. She, again, as a warrior queen who defied British colonialism, she embodies Black women's leadership. She embodies our leadership in the fight for liberation, which again, we're still in. We have gained some traction. We have gained some advantages, but as a whole, as a people, we are still not liberated. We have the illusion of liberation, but we are not there yet. All of us that are alive now in 2025, we have a role to play in moving that forward. And she shows us that Black women have always been at the core of that fight for liberation, and that Black women's leadership is necessary in that fight for liberation. Had she not stood up, what would have happened? How far would the British have gone? Not only the 6 months that she delayed them because of fighting them for 6 months, which, again, took them off guard and delayed them actually annexing, taking, colonizing the Ashanti people. That fight forced the British to rethink their strategies. That everything and everyone was not going to go down without a fight. They had to take a step back and understand the potential casualties and the losses that they would incur by coming in and colonizing more and doing more damage and doing more harm. She made them think twice. So not only literally delaying them coming in, she may have delayed even more that we will never know, because she forced them to have to think about things in a different way, which means now, today, we got to think about things in a different way. Just saying. So these are 4 of the many reasons why she is dope as fuck, just as Black women are dope AF. And we give thanks to Nana Yaa Asantewaa for the work, for the contribution, for the fight that she showed us, for the resistance and the honor that she showed us. We give thanks. But let's dig into her wisdom. What is it about her life, her legacy, that Black women today can tap into, and how we can use it to go forward? What's the medicine in her wisdom? So the first wisdom I extract from her and receive from her is that it's about defending your culture and your identity and your legacy. Don't let anyone erase your truth. And we know for a fact what is happening, the times that we are in right now, this transformative moment, and by moment I mean period of years, because in the grand scheme of life, these few years are actually moments. We are in a transformational moment where they are trying to erase our history, erase our existence, erase our truth. And we cannot let anyone do that. That is the message. That is the wisdom from Yaa Asantewaa. That British governor trying to sit on a stool would have effectively erased who they were and their spiritual traditions. So defend your culture, your identity, your legacy. And how do you apply that? The medicine, reclaim and uplift Black histories. Tell your stories, tell our people's story. Learn about African history from Black scholars, not from these European scholars who tell every story from their own perspective and leave out as much as possible and use words like annexed and sacked instead of conquered, invaded, looted, raped, and pillaged. They don't tell the truth of the story. So learn about African history, learn about Black history, Black American history, Black diaspora history, African history from Black scholars. We have plenty of them. Dig in, these Black scholars and historians, to actually learn the truth. Support Black authors, educators, and activists who preserve our narratives. And teach the next generation about our revolutionary ancestors and their struggles. We need to learn from our history, gather that wisdom, gather that insight, and use it as we go forward. There is nothing new under the sun. All of they keep using the same strategies, even down to using poor white men to make them think that they're somehow better than everyone else, when really it's about the extremely wealthy. I'm talking about in this day and age, and it's the same playbook that they have used time and time again, all the way back for hundreds of years. So while they're still using the same playbook, let's look at our history to understand how we have resisted it in the past and how we can evolve it as we go forward. And part of that starts with knowing your history, knowing who the fuck you are by knowing your history and learning it from people who look like you, not from your colonizers or your enslavers. Learn it from your own people. And your own people who look like you and are of the same cultural context of you. Because again, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, because we got some people out there just straight cosplaying. I'm just saying. The other piece of wisdom from Yaa Asantewaa is to step into leadership even when others hesitate. Child, she exemplified that. She was not playing. Step into your leadership. Let me change this a little bit. Step into your leadership. When those Ashanti men hesitated to fight, she stepped up. And because she stepped up and the women stepped up with her, the men stepped up as well. And then there were thousands fighting for each other, for their future, for their descendants, for their ancestors, forward and backwards. They were fighting for their people. Now, Black women are often expected to wait their turn, or to be asked, or to be quiet, or to somehow just be in a support role. But that is not how we are meant to be. Now, that does not mean you can't be on a team or play a role in that, or understand when to come forward and lead and when to support someone else that's leading. But to be relegated to always be in a support, or to wait in the wings, or to operate in this very defined small box of what it means to be a leader, especially as a Black woman, that is not who we are, and that is not how we are meant to be. What Yaa Asantewaa taught us is to take up space unapologetically. I could only imagine the thunderous voice that came from her as she spoke and invoked ancestors, invoked their spirituality, and criticized the men for their hesitation. Because at that point, she was feeling the emotional outrage, not only her own, but of the ancestors. Like, how dare you even consider letting this happen, having any hesitation? So she stood and she took up that space unapologetically. And what we can do, how we can use that wisdom for our medicine today, is lead boldly, whether it's in activism, in business, in your community, however you need to show up and to lead. Now, there are ways to lead. There are situations in which to lead. And the definition of lead is very subjective. How you personally are meant to lead is not going to look and be the same way as another person is meant to lead, which is why remembering and knowing who you are, my activity book, Remember Who the Fuck You Are, is so critical. You need to know who you are and how you're meant to show up as a leader and not duplicate or emulate someone else that you see showing up as leader, and damn sure not our colonizers, because how they lead is not actually leadership, it's dictatorship, it's fascism. That's not leadership. So again, if you go back to the first wisdom and the follow-up from that, the medicine from that is learning your history. And part of that is learning, what does Black women leadership look like in antiquity? What has it looked like? Nana Yaa Asantewaa is showing us one of those ways of what it looks like. That is how you show up. And when you want to lead boldly, you lead boldly from the authenticity of who you are. And you show up and you lead in a way that is specific to how you lead. And don't let anyone else tell you you're supposed to lead in a different way, because they're only used to seeing leaders in a certain way. Because she did what she needed to do. We give thanks, Nana Yaa Asantewaa. And then, even in exile, her wisdom, even in exile, your legacy can inspire generations to come. She was in exile for 20 years. She died on that island, away from her people. But her legacy, her inspiration continue to live and thrive. There are monuments, statues, schools, festival, like she is honored. Her legacy continued. So because she stood up and did what needed to be done, she took her role as a leader unapologetically. She took up space unapologetically. That impact was felt then and continued to be felt. It's 2025, and I'm sitting here talking to you about her right now, inspired by her right now. So it doesn't matter what they do. By the they, I mean the colonizers, the fascists, the dictators, these scared little boys who want to take over the world and play war with the world. Regardless of what they do, your impact, your importance, your legacy, your leadership matters. Stand in that power and fight for liberation, justice, and self-determination. Fight for your people. Fight if you're just fighting for your block and not fighting with your block, but meaning your community. This fight does not have to be on a national stage. It doesn't have to be this huge, grandiose thing. That's why in the previous wisdom in medicine, it's about knowing who you are and how your unique way to lead shows up. So when you fight for liberation, justice, and our self-determination, you do that in the context of which you are meant to do, your own gifts and talents. Again, going back to week 1 of the ancestral activation, there was a day when we dived into understanding our gifts and talents inherited from our ancestral lineages. Excuse me. We didn't just get trauma, we got gifts and talents from them as well. Tapping into all of that so that we can stand up and we can fight for our liberation because, and I've said this almost every week, our ancestors got us to this point so that we can enjoy the seemingly freedoms that we have now. It's our job to do the same for our descendants, for future generations, because we're not completely free. We are not completely liberated. And any amount of freedom and liberation that our ancestors fought, lived, and died for is at threat of being taken away now. So now it's our turn in this continuum to do our part. We are the future ancestors. When our descendants look back, what did we do? How did we contribute? How did we fight for our liberation and justice so that our descendants could have a life, hopefully more free than what we experienced? And we do that by understanding that we are all here to leave a legacy in whatever small, large, middle ground, in whatever way that we are meant to. Take a deep breath. We give thanks, Nana Yaa Asantewaa. We give thanks for your fight. We give thanks for your legacy. We give thanks for your words of wisdom. We give thanks for your courage. We give thanks for your love and your light. We give thanks for your action. We give thanks for the example you have shown us as Black women on what Black women leadership looks like or can look like, one of the many facets of Black women leadership. We give thanks to you, Nana Yaa Asantewaa. Take a deep breath. I hope you found that inspiring. And by that, I mean her life. There's so much more we can learn and explore when it comes to Nana Yaa Asantewaa. And we give thanks to her. We give thanks to her life and her wisdom and all that she has left for us. And again, if you want to dig in deeper, there's more. Um, I've done more videos here on YouTube, and eventually I'll turn them into podcasts as well so you can get them on other platforms. But there have been a lot of ancestral mothers that have shown us just how incredibly dope it is to be a Black woman. And that is what I hope this series and this honoring of Nana Yaa Asantewaa can inspire within you for you yourself to know and remember how dope you are as a Black woman or femme, how dope you are, how incredible you are, how your authentic gifts and talents are exactly what we need right now. The healed you, the full you, the authentic you, the truth telling you. Black women are dope as fuck, and so are you. I'll see you here next week. And in the meantime, you can check out the activity book, Remember Who the Fuck You Are, and start working on that. You can check out any of the other videos here where I explore some of our ancestral legacies. And I'll see you here next Friday. And as always, every single day, take good care of you. And I'll see you next week.